Workplace as a service is the ability to use Workplace when you need it and not necessarily have to own it.
Is it workplace as a service or is it workplace as an experience?
Workplace as a service has emerged as a sort of series of components that, in a way, take a lot of the decision making for how much space do you need, how are you going to operate and use it, and for sort of what period of time are you going to need it, and bundled it into an experience that is much more hospitality and service driven.
Workplace as a service is the concept of removing the day-to-day functions of an office space from the responsibility of a tenant and taking those on as a landlord.
Basically, you're faced with, do you want to build out a space or do you want to have someone else do the work for you?
My definition of workplace as a service is really it's two things. One, it's space that's very flexible, that can take large customers, small customers, that can allow smaller companies to grow into bigger companies, and then that has a very robust technology overlay on top that's grabbing the data coming out of that space and then ultimately delivering services and comfort that people deserve and expect.
You could say that's like renting, but it's like renting a car as opposed to renting an apartment, right? Or perhaps using an Uber instead of renting a car. So I think the transportation industry is way down the road on this stuff, and the real estate industry is catching up, primarily because of the vast capital investment that already exists. The legacy investment in real estate, tends to prefer a different type of model, the more traditional model.
To me, it's all about flexibility. It's all about community. It's all about ultimately having a base level of service so that I, as a small startup, don't have to go out and create myself. It's already there on the floor that I can use. And then ultimately it's about an ecosystem of, hey, I'm not big enough to have a marketing department, but geez, there's a company just down the hallway that does marketing. Bingo, I can go work them. There's somebody who does graphic design. Boom, I can go, use them as a service and ultimately allow me to focus on what I should be focusing on, which is my core business.
So you're starting to meet a demand in the market with an abundance of supply, and we haven't quite figured out yet, what is that supply? Is it just space, or is it, does it include amenities like, copiers and bandwidth and all the pieces that go along with it? Physical security, cybersecurity is associated with the space that you're in and where you're working. So I think that as an industry, we're still grappling with what is it truly that we're offering.
But as smaller companies figured out early that something like WeWork or Industrious could satisfy their needs without requiring them to make an enormous investment, then they started taking advantage of those things. And so what's happened since is that big companies have figured out that, oh, well, do I really need to own real estate? Is there a way that I can take advantage of some of these workplaces as a service such that I get the same productivity and amenities and employee experience, but I don't necessarily have to put out all the capital?
And it's interesting because I think the biggest fear for everybody is to attach themselves to a 10-year lease. It's a lot of money to put out of pocket, and it's so hard to predict where your company is going to be in a few years, let alone 10 years down the line. How much space do you need? And that's a lot of money to put out front.
Back in the early dot-com era, people would raise capital and they would basically buy two things. They would buy Workplace and they would buy data center. As a result of cloud computing, nobody buys data center anymore except the data center operators, right? Except the cloud. Now, we're addressing the issue that, do you actually need to buy Workplace? And if you can use Workplace as a service, why would you?
It's taken the responsibility for the operations, facility sort of management and operations of the workplace as well, and also bundled that in the way that says, you do your business best, allow us, in a service-driven capacity, to do Workplace best, to provide that in a better way for you.
And the idea is that Doing this increases the flexibility for tenants to utilize their space. They can increase their flexibility in how they program for that, and they can focus on kind of what they're experts at rather than spending more time and having additional resources on managing their real estate. So if they offload that to us, they can be more efficient in how they generate their revenue.